Today I want to start with a bold statement about Napoleon and freedom. Did you know that without Napoleon and his military genius, you would probably not know freedom and human rights as you experience them today, and as many countries of the world experience them, and let's hope the whole world in a few generations. The world of movie fans and historians is buzzing with debates about Ridley Scott's film Napoleon, where Joaquin Phoenix is depicting a certain image of Napoleon that is not so accurate, by the way, but this is not the topic of the video. This video is about showing you something that I have read in very, very few books, actually never really in any book or article nor in videos. It's the fact that when France was about to fall with the attack of most armies of tyrants of Europe, then Napoleon arrived and saved France, and probably at that time saved human rights. But you're going to see how this happened in reality in these few years of the Napoleonic era, and as victory is always written by the victors, and Napoleon was the loser, France was the loser, this has been nearly never explained in that way before. So please pay attention. If you like this video, of course, subscribe to my channel and like it. And I'm going to show you from the point of view of energy how what happened in the world at that time in France and in Europe helped propel the human rights and maybe protect them, and how the United States of America as we know them today, with their 200 years of human rights also, would have probably never existed. Did you know that the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era helped us be in the world that we are today, a world of freedom for many countries, of democracy, but also helped generate the concept of modern Europe and unity amongst countries that priorly were making the wars all the time together. And this has laid the foundations of the modern era, where a whole continent is trying to generate more and more peace in spite of all the geopolitical issues like the ones we see today. So let me explain to you how this very specific era of Napoleonic War following the French Revolution helped us change the world. In 1789, we experienced in France what we call the French Revolution. The people are starving, they are scared, they don't have enough bread, and the state has lacked the necessary reformations that would have allowed more equality and more representation amongst the people. So it led to what we call the French Revolution, where the people seized the power and started to accuse the aristocrats for all their suffering and started to behead them. This was the result of what we could call the Age of Enlightenment, where philosophers, mainly from France, but from different places in Europe, for instance, Jean-Jacques Rousseau was Swiss, shared and expressed ideas that were very revolutionary for the times. Because if you think about it, at the time of the French Revolution, there is only one country that has made a declaration of independence from the former imperialistic states of Europe, and that issued a constitution that recognized the rights of equality for all the citizens. But before that, and before the French Revolution, if you are not an aristocrat, well then, let's say for instance that a person in your family dies because of an aristocrat. Let's say the car of the aristocrat, the chariot, kills the person. Well, do you think that the noble will go to jail? Well, of course not. The noble will even find a way maybe to accuse the person to have put himself under the chariot. So there was absolutely no equality and there was no justice, no freedom, which means that the whole European people, apart from the aristocrats, were living in a state that is very close to slavery. And if you think about it, at the time, Europe is controlling a big part of the world through the colonies. And in the following decades, Europe, and especially through the power of Great Britain, would soon control most of the countries of the world. Meaning that at that time, the whole world population is under slavery of Europe. So it's not just the European people, it's the people of the world. And there's something that I have never read in any book. It doesn't mean it's not been written, but I haven't seen it. And I've read a lot of things about the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era, is that in 1789, when the French Revolution starts, well, the armies of Europe start to attack France because, of course, the old powers represented by the royal families cannot accept the state where the people are rebelling against their authority. French King Louis XVI is beheaded, as well as the Queen Marie Antoinette, who is a descendant of the Habsburg family from Austria. And this has never been seen before. So the European royal powers and imperial powers attack France, and the French armies of the revolution fight with immense energy because they believe in the power of their ideas, in the ideas of freedom, equality, and the marvelous possibilities that it opens for the future, which is the world we live in today. You need to know that in 1796, France is at the brink of losing the war. And then arrives this guy who is called Napoleon Bonaparte. And he will succeed in the first campaign in Italy. Then he will generate the plan to go to Egypt because the people in power do not want to cede the power to him yet. He's too young and he's uncontrollable for them, and they don't like the fact that he's attracting so much attention for the people. So when he comes back from Egypt, France in 1799 is at the brink of bankruptcy. The armies of Europe are at the borders of France, and basically in a few months France would have to surrender because there are too many enemies and there's too much at stake, and the people in power, they generate anarchy, and they are not at the proper level that is sufficient for the survival of this new republic. And so Bonaparte manages to seize the power and to send himself as the commander-in-chief in Italy, and hence the second campaign in Italy, which is a major success for France and which also starts to propel the ideas of the revolution amongst the Italian people. And this is very new because before that nobody could beat the armies of powers like Austria, which was the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire, but also the armies and the finances of England, of Prussia, and Russia. All of these powers were starting to gather troops to fight the armies of the revolution and to kill in the egg, this new adventure that the people of the world were experiencing through the French. And what is very important to know is that if France would have fallen in 1800 or 1801, we were just months away from this defeat from France and total bankruptcy. If France had been defeated, well then what would have happened? Of course, Great Britain would have turned to the American continent and destroyed with all their limitless means young American Revolution, and hence it would have destroyed the chances of mankind to discover the ideas and to experiment the ideas of democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of cult, religious and spiritual freedom, movement, but also the fact that we have equal justice for all. And this was the great revolution in the ideas propelled by the fathers of the American Constitution, but also the founders of the new French Republic. And you need to know that in spite of Napoleon he was a dictator, he was a man with very strong power and authority. But in spite of this, you need to know that he and all the soldiers, from the simple soldier to the general, when they were fighting the war against the enemies of France and the French Revolution during these many years of the Napoleonic era, they were propelling the ideas of freedom and democracy, the new republic, and that the fact that all men and women are equal. There's not the aristocrats and the happy few and all the rest needs to obey. They are their subjects and they are like near slaves. So this was a new flame of enthusiasm going across Europe. And this is what I never read in any book, is that without the French Revolution and Napoleon and the wonderful people, because he was surrounded by geniuses who were around him at that time, it's like the clash of the titans. Well, with this moment in France and the power of the Napoleonic Empire, well then, probably we would also have lost the experiment of the American Revolution and democracy, because the powers in Europe, and especially Great Britain, would have crushed it. So at that time, we had only two poles representing these ideas that we now know as the Declaration of the Rights of the Citizen, the Declaration of the Rights of the Human Being, that we are all equal, that we have freedom of speech, movement, you name it, and that we can basically use this new environment to generate the perspectives that we start to know today in the world. Try to be more creative and create a world like in the European community right now, where there is peace. And we'll still need, as you know from the current events, that we cannot take it for granted. There is never enough peace. There is never enough power in democracy, because even now Europe is starting to become non-democratic because of people who have not been elected and who run this supercontinent. So let's get back to Napoleonic times. I have sometimes heard that Napoleon was a super tyrant, and that's the way he's been seen since. All the people who know the man and who know this history can say that he was some kind of genius. And his creativity, his ideas, his expertise in so many ways was very precious. And when you read history of these times, you can see that although the French made very big mistakes at times, of course, and especially towards the end of this era, where the invasion of Spain, the invasion, of course, of Russia were major, major mistakes, amongst others. But you can see that France and Napoleon was not wishing the war. The war was always waged upon France, coalition after coalition, because the aristocratic and royal superpowers could not stand this situation of the French Revolution. They had to destroy it totally. That's why they were relentlessly sacrificing hundreds of thousands of their soldiers, as if they were just robots, as if they had no value, just because they wanted to stay in power, or just because they refused to do any reformation of the political system or any compromise. So hundreds of thousands of people were dying in vain, because these people were so stubborn and so cruel that they could not stand a country, a powerful country. France at the time was, I think, 40 million people, led by a powerful team of people who were fighting for the recognition, at least on their territory, of these rights. So this is a fact that is not very well known. And about Napoleon, by the way, this guy has written the Civil Code, which has now been applied by, I think, at least a third of the countries in the world, and it's been an inspiration for even more countries. And of course, in the civil code, which is the general law for the people, you have the equality between people and the equality of movement, of the freedom of speech and so forth. So these ideas, although they were expressed by a very strong man who today we would call a tyrant, but these were different times. All the leaders of the world were tyrants at the time, apart from the ones in America. All of them, everybody were tyrants, and much worse than Napoleon, because they were tyrants where they had the possibility to decide for the death or life of anybody, or torture people, or and jail opponents at will. This killed the families of their opponents, etc. So you need to know that at this time, history, let's say, of the world needed a powerful country with a very strong demographics and a powerful team of people led by Napoleon, who was quite outstanding in his qualities and in the genius he has expressed. So the historians say and describe. The world needed this very strong superpower in France to propel the ideas of the Age of Enlightenment and give them a chance to survive until today. Because you know the remaining of the story. Finally, Napoleon was defeated in 1815. The royal and imperial families of the world were so scared with him that they decided to send him to St. Helena Island, which is in the southern Atlantic, in very tough conditions, with total disrespect of what they had promised him. But anyway, in that way, they got rid of him. And for a few decades, the ideas of the Age of Enlightenment were restrained, and they only could develop through time in the different countries. You know, it's until the end, for instance, of the last 25 years of the 19th century, most of the Russian population, for instance, they were slaves, literally slaves. But until World War I, we have still royal and imperial families waging wars at a scale, unprecedented scale, and generating so much destruction in Europe, and then they would do it again. The leaders of same countries in Europe would do it again in World War II. And so you can see that violence has been extreme in this continent before we started to understand that we need to create a continent with peace, and especially starting with the French and the Germans, who had been at war 3 times before in the last 80 years, and who could create with other countries such as Italy, Belgium, Holland, soon to be joined by the United Kingdom and other wonderful countries of Europe. Now there are 27, I think. We could create a community, the European community, that will serve, you will see, that will serve as an example for future continental alliances and communities that join in the context of mutual respect for each other's sovereignty, but also respect of the same values, the same ideals, types of culture, and also, of course, the idea to build a stronger economy and coherence in the region. So this is very interesting because, as you know, our history belongs to the victors. So in 1815, France is the loser, because France could not anymore sustain the permanent suppression, oppression and aggression of these royal and imperial families, who again could not stand the simple idea of freedom, freedom of speech, democracy and equality between people. So thank God America for the United States Constitution, and thank God for France and the Napoleonic era for defending these ideals extremely firmly by a matter of circumstances. And thanks to this period, nowadays, part of the world can experience a certain form of democracy that still needs to be evolved, that still need to be perfected, thanks to our ideas, our creativity, our demands also on the political leaders, and in the ways we express ourselves, so that we can generate a society in the future that will respect even more all individuals, forms of life, animals, vegetables, and the planet. This is our future. This was the secrets of history from the point of view of energy. If you like this type of video, please subscribe to my channel. Please share it with others and like it. See you. Have a good day.